gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So Cenk Uygur was on Piers Morgan along with Tim Pool and the congressman who has introduced articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. His name is Shri Thanedar. And so he is basically proposing that Trump be impeached over his violations of the Constitution, but also just his egregious mishandling of the economy via tariffs and stuff like that. So what this guy is really doing is he's seizing the opportunity where Trump has become a little bit less popular to start to lay out the justification for him to be impeached. And really, he's giving Congress an opportunity to end this madness before it gets too much worse, which it will. You have Tom Homan threatening mayors and leaders of sanctuary cities. They're arresting judges, which doesn't come up in this interview for whatever reason, as well as arresting and deporting students for their free speech. And in this overall conversation, you've got a lot of bloviating back and forth between people like Kari Lake and this other woman who's on there who I can't quite remember her name, but really it's the only person who's there to provide the anti-Trump perspective is Cenk. And he does a decent job, but also, you know, he capitulates on some things he probably shouldn't capitulate on. But also, I mean, he's there specifically to make the arguments against Trump's mishandling of the economy and constitutional violations, which is also what the congressman is there to do. So some interesting moments came out of this. Let me play them real quick. This Piers Morgan show, unfortunately, as much as I hate to admit it, is actually a pretty good forum for discussing these issues, because even though the debate forum and the talking over each other gets ridiculous and sometimes unproductive, and he also has some of the most insane people that are on the political market on this program. He also has, people from the left that other commentators wouldn't have. And usually the conversations are issues focused. So that's what I was mostly interested by in this conversation. And I think it's a good example of where we're at as a country now that Trump's favorability is starting to turn. This sort of like honeymoon phase that he had after his election now seems to be over, and it's only going to get worse because the economy is only going to get worse. The mishandling has already happened, and so the defensiveness that you're going to see from Kari Lake, Tim Pool, and this other lady here is the same thing they're going to be hammering away at for the next 4 years, or at least the next 2 years. So let's check this out.
All right, Kari Lake, you're very pro-Trump. We know that. I like Donald Trump personally. I speak to him quite regularly. I've got to say, though, this is a massive throw of the dice. He's come back into the White House. He's thrown everything, including the kitchen sink, up in the air. He has turned all establishment norms on their head. And right now, he's got very poor approval ratings and a really in shock US economy that doesn't quite know what it's going to do or how this all plays out. It's a roll of the dice, isn't it? Because at some stage this has to work. If it doesn't work, then come the midterms, the Republicans are going to be in big trouble.
Well, let me start by saying I'm pro-America, and this is why I love President Trump and I love his agenda, because he has put our country first. I disagree with you. I think you're talking about some really bogus polling. I know how polling works. I ran for office twice. Trust me, I know how polling works. You can make a poll say anything, and it's typical for the mainstream media to try to downplay all of the accomplishments of President Trump and his incredible administration. He has had no choice but to go in like a bull in a china shop and move quickly. We were on the verge, Pierce, of losing our country after 4 abysmal years of Joe Biden. The inflation was out of control. The border was wide open. People were pouring in, including gangbangers like this guy that the fake news media is acting like is the second coming, this Kilmore guy. And they're going to bat for him. They don't give a damn about the American people. And so President Trump has had to act and move quickly. I'm glad he has, and he has overwhelming support. Even Tim talked about what he did with, and what he is continuing to do with DOJ, coming in and cleaning out these agencies, pulling back, slimming down the bureaucracy. It has to be done or we will lose our country. We're not out of the woods just yet. And thank God for President Trump. Joe Biden had 100 excuses for why we had inflation, the open border, high gas prices, all kinds of problems. He had 100 excuses. President Trump simply needed 100 days to get things turned around. I can't wait for the next 100 days. Frankly, I wish we could have him for the next, 10,000 days, because we need a fighter like President Trump for the long road.
Give me one criticism of the 100 days so far.
I really don't see any criticism. And I'm not saying that because I know him and I like him. I'm saying that because he's done a great job. I mean, he's a human being. Every once in a while, you might make a tiny misstep. I can't off the top of my head.
Pretend he's Joe Biden for a minute and try that. All right, well, Cenk Uygur, welcome to Uncensored. You're laughing, I suspect, not in a way that indicates fulsome support for what Ms. Lake was just saying.
No, not fulsome support at all. All right, so first, usually, obviously we're always fair, right? So in the beginning, he comes out and he closed the border, and that's really popular. That's what people elected him for. He does a lot of executive orders. Now, a lot of those in the beginning, very beginning, I disagreed with instantly, but some of the later ones were more disastrous, but it looked like there was action being taken. So, and it showed in his polls. He'd already won the popular vote, and then he added to that lead in his polling, and that's back when, of course, Republicans believed in polling, when he was above 50% and popular, etc. And then what did he do? He pulled a Trump. He can't help himself. He loves his authoritarian tendencies, to put it mildly. He loves testing the limits of what he could do. He started talking about third term, started saying we're not doing due process, we're not listening to the courts, etc. And now he's lost people on all sides, the wild, outrageous tariffs. And, obviously, Batya and Kari and I had a debate about that, and I was right and they were wrong. And so I'm curious to see if they'll admit that now, because I said, of course, Trump will pull back the global tariffs. They were nuclear and ridiculous, and he pulled them back, 2 days after we had that debate?
Democratic Congressman Shri Thanedar introduced formal articles of impeachment earlier this week, citing acts of tyranny and abuse of power. And he joins me now. Welcome to you, Congressman.
Thank you.
So you're going hard on Trump. You're citing sweeping abuse of power, flagrant violations of the Constitution, acts of tyranny that undermine American democracy and threaten the rule of law. Out of interest, what has Trump done that has massively surprised you, or that most of his diehard supporters didn't vote for?
Well, look, the tariffs, this is Congress's prerogative. He took that over illegally, unconstitutionally, and made a mess of it. And that lost stock values, people's 401k value got lost. He made a mess of it, and he tried to bully China. That didn't work. And right now, prices of everything are going up. He got elected because people thought he was best in handling the economy. It turned out that he made a mess of it.
I have a favor to ask of this congressman, and excuse me, I hope Cenk joins me in this. Congressman, will you file articles of impeachment against Barack Obama for the extrajudicial assassination of Abdulrahman al-Awlaki?
I was not a member of Congress then. I am now. I have seen,
and we can convict him and put him in prison if you want to file those.
I have seen the unconstitutional, illegal activities of Donald Trump, and those are the ones that I am holding him responsible for.
Nobody cared when Obama murdered American citizens, especially a 16-year-old kid who is not a target.
Obama is not the president right now.
This is ridiculous. When Anwar al-Awlaki was assassinated, an extrajudicial assassination, and his 16-year-old son by Obama, the Democrats defended this and they said he should have had a better father. No one cared. Nobody cared. I know Cenk cared. I know he's talked about it. I'm mad about it too. So now when you come out and you say Trump's going to be impeached because he's doing things that are unpopular, I'm personally offended.
It's not unpopular. It's illegal.
Murdered Americans. No one did anything.
You're all going to whataboutisms here, and I can understand why, because Trump's in bad shape. So you're going back to Obama. Look, I agree with Tim on the Anwar al-Awlaki. I'm the guy who brought it up. I wonder if Tim agrees with me on cutting the Pentagon, because Tim, you and I agreed on cutting the Pentagon when I was on his show, and now all of a sudden they're not cutting. They're adding $150 billion. So they're frauds, right? Let's be honest about that, right? So, but we're going to whataboutisms here. We can go back to Grover Cleveland if you guys like, right? We can go back to James Polk if you guys like. But you're trying to distract from what's happening with Trump. I'm perfectly willing to criticize all the other Democrats in the past for all the things that they've done wrong. But right now, we got to rescue the country. And so at this point, there's two different problems. One is that Trump keeps doing things that are unconstitutional. And to your earlier point, Piers, that is not what people voted for.
You see, they're all kind of laying out their basic premise here and how they feel about the Trump administration. Piers lays out pretty clearly that the first 100 days have been chaotic and don't seem to be going well at this point. The way things have gone, not only have they made significant mistakes, but they're going in a direction that only promises to be more and more chaotic. And that's bad. That's not just bad for all of us who hate Trump, who don't want to see fascism or whatever. That's bad for Trump's administration. The worse things get, the worse he handles the economy in a way that materially affects people's lives, the worse it's going to be for Republicans in general. And the idea that they get totally wiped out and the political situation is completely different after the midterms is not just a possibility, it's entirely likely. It does not look like they're going to correct course here. And so what you hear from some of these people is essentially they have to start figuring out what it is that they're going to use as their method of defending Trump as things get worse. And so from Kari Lake, you hear this interesting slogan: Joe Biden had 100 excuses, Trump needed only 100 days. That's an interesting obfuscation because it doesn't address any of the concerns about where we're at. It's just a slogan. And that's the language of a person like Kari Lake. And not only is it, disgusting from the perspective of somebody who doesn't agree with her, it also, wasn't effective to win her an election and has not been effective in making her a popular candidate. But she's still here. She's still making appearances. So we're likely going to be seeing more of Kari Lake going forward. And then Piers Morgan asks her, do you have any criticisms whatsoever of Donald Trump? And she says no. She says there's nothing she can think of. So that's where she is on that issue. Tim Pool does this, both sides thing, and I'll get back to him in a moment. He's always doing that. Consistently takes the wrong position on every issue, so that's funny. And then Cenk Uygur essentially starts by saying that Trump did something popular, which was shut down the border, and but then everything he's done since then is bad. I think even that was a mistake for him to say that, but he's doing that on this program because he's trying to acknowledge to these people what it is with Trump's base, and even a little bit wider than that makes Trump popular. And so it's the type of capitulation that we're used to from Cenk at this point. But for the most part, I think he did an okay job. He was a little bit outnumbered here and maybe not as bombastic as he usually is, which is pretty much the only tool that he has in his repertoire. But I just think it's interesting watching these folks kind of, it's a lot of like, well, he's playing the long game, or, well, we have to trust him. This is Joe Biden's economy and he's turned it around and it's going to take some time. So this is the kind of stuff that we're going to see from them. And the interesting thing that happens with Tim Pool here is how he goes on this very impassioned rant. The most passionate he gets in this video is trying to get the senator, or trying to get the congressman who has introduced these articles of impeachment for Trump to also introduce articles of impeachment for Obama. This is a bizarre thing, and he's talking about a murder of an American citizen that happened under Obama's watch, named Anwar al-Awlaki, and this was a thing that happened. He was killed by a CIA drone strike in a place that America was not officially at war with. So these are the type of extrajudicial killings that we are used to from the American government. Trump has committed them. Joe Biden committed them as well. Joe Biden committed many, many thousands of them by supporting Gaza, as well as Obama. And so, in other words, Tim is right about this. He's right about this, and when he says that they never go after the war machine, that's correct. However, it's so interesting that he gets so impassioned about this thing about Obama that's years in the past, and he's not using that to even the playing field. And that's the kind of purpose that he serves here, because Pierce also makes the point that what about Joe Biden and Hunter in Burisma, which I still don't think that that's an accurate point. It doesn't compare to anything that Trump's doing. He says that after the congressman references Trump making money off of crypto. So just open corruption, not comparable to anything that was happening under Joe Biden or anything else. None of that was even happening while he was president. So these are all just distractions from the current conversation. And that's the only thing that they have. This is exactly what they did last time Trump was in power too, is that anything that Trump does that is absolutely egregious, in many cases egregious to a level that no other president has done before, they start digging up in the archives and finding things that are comparable that other presidents have done and trying to serve that up as some kind of and Tim Pool is the perfect example here, where he takes something that happened. He wants an impeachment and a conviction of Barack Obama over that killing. Now, look, if that's really what he wants, I support that. But it's interesting that that's what he's bringing that up in this context, which only serves to distract from this conversation, because really what he's trying to say is that he supports the impeachment of Trump over these violations of the Constitution. He just wants to distract this congressman by, making it about something else also, because, and that's Tim Pool's format of content, if you don't also agree to this unrelated point, that makes your point insignificant and disproven. So what all of this means is that this Congressman Thanedar is doing a good job. What he's doing is effective, and is Trump going to get impeached? I don't know, probably not. But it is entirely possible that these articles of impeachment, if Democrats take over the House again in the midterms, which who knows, these could be the articles of impeachment that do actually lead to impeachment of Trump. That's not out of the question here. That's a long way in the future. We have no idea what they're going to do in the meantime, or what a process like that would even look like. It would probably be horrific if things got to that point. Trump would obviously not go easily. But that's what these guys are here to do, is they're here to be on the defensive, and they need to start creating the narratives that are going to chip away at that legitimate impeachment claim. And, Republicans also introduced impeachment articles for Joe Biden over Hunter Biden and other things. So it's like, this is the type of political game that we're used to at this point. This guy knows that these articles of impeachment are not going anywhere, at least not right now, but he's doing it to start to try to make the argument, and he's taking advantage of the fact that Trump is unpopular at the moment, and now's a good time to start mounting these attacks. So I think following his lead is a good thing. I don't know if he has the strength as a public figure and character to really lead the charge on this, and I doubt AOC and Bernie will attach themselves to that, because they seem to be focused on a larger issue. However, if things change a little bit, if there's an egregious enough violation of the Constitution, although I think we're already past that point, but if things get even worse to a point that's so undeniable that the mainstream conversation starts to be about impeachment, these articles that this guy has laid out and the foundation that he's laying out is very important. And also the argument that these guys are making against it is going to be repeated ad nauseum over the airwaves. So just be ready for that. And don't lose sight of the fact that whether it's the Trump Bitcoin, whether it's the violations of the Constitution, by deporting people to El Salvador, violating court orders, or even just wrecking the economy in the irresponsible way that he has done. Gavin Newsom has directly attacked Trump by saying that the president does not have constitutional authority to impart tariffs. And he's actually right about that. The only reason he's getting away with it is because the Republican Congress is letting him get away with it. But really, they could challenge his power on that. And Gavin Newsom, as one of the states being hit the hardest by tariffs, is, starting to mount a real offense against that. Not to say I love Gavin Newsom, but these are the types of lines of attack that we need to see against Trump, and they're not going to go away. These problems are not going to be addressed or fixed by Trump. They're only going to get worse. And so Democrats are starting to figure out what the effective weapons that they have to use against Trump are. And I do think it's a good idea to continue pushing the line that all of these things are impeachable offenses. Whether or not that actually happens and comes to fruition it's entirely possible that it could, and would probably be the best case scenario. I mean, I don't think like the solution here is for Democrats to just get back in power without any meaningful change to their agenda or their behavior or their actual catering to their base. Democrats would be much stronger if they adopted real policies like the things that Bernie and AOC are talking about that make them more strong and more popular, so that even if, we're going in the scary radical leftist direction, at least there's something that we stand for. There's a vision for the future. And Donald Trump and the Republicans somehow were able to present what the American people felt, what a decent portion of the American people felt was a stronger vision for the future. And so chipping away at the instantaneous negative results at some of these things as they start to happen and using that to lay the foundation for a better way forward is really the only chance of salvation that the Democratic Party has. And even that is probably not something we should count on. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. Posting all kinds of content there, like book reviews, movie reviews, music. If you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, all of that's posted there. Plus my EPs. I just dropped a new EP called Dead Internet Theory that's available on all streaming platforms, and that was available first for members only. So if you want access to that, become a member. And if there's other stuff that you'd like to see as members only content, let me know and we'll figure some things out.